Of course, it wouldn't be a Trump. So,
Fox News press aide.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Trump.
At the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We gotta unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Tuesday, October 29th. I'm Dean Obeidallah. As always, your needy MBFF. I'm there. Twitter, at Dean Obeidallah. So, my friends, there was so much going on in the world of impeachment. We're going to cover it all today, from people testifying to a new House resolution just hours ago unveiled, the Democrats, about outlining what the procedure will be going forward on impeachment inquiry, even giving due process rights to Donald Trump. It's actually consistent with what they did with Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton, so that's fine. We'll get into all of that. And also, I think today marks the new low point in terms of despicableness from Republicans in his talked about yesterday on Sunday. So here he is, and it's actually a clip we had played about Trump bragging that he discovered bin Laden, and that before anyone, he warned everyone about bin Laden. Here's clip number one.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Trump press conference, or really a Trump anything, without some shameless self-promotion.
You know, if you read my book, there was a book just before the World Trade Center came down. And I don't get any credit for this, but that's okay. I never do. But here we are. I wrote a book, a really very successful book. And in that book, about a year before the World Trade Center was blown up, I said, there is somebody named Osama bin Laden. You better kill him or take him out. Something to that effect. He's big trouble.
No, you didn't. You didn't do that at all. You didn't say that at all. Not even close. We looked at your 2000 book, The America We Deserve, and you make a passing mention of bin Laden, who, in the book you say, Bill Clinton had already tried to kill. So you were predicting something that everyone already knew. In my next book, I predict you'll be hearing big things from this Taylor Swift individual. She's really going places. Time to take her out. Okay. No one listens, but that's all right. Shake it off.
And this next short joke by Colbert makes me laugh like a child. I don't know why, but just play clip number two.
Then Trump described al-Baghdadi's death using one of his favorite metaphors.
He died like a dog. He died like a coward. He died like a dog. He died like a coward.
Ah, yes. I remember when I was a child, my dog, Mr. Fluffles, got sick, and we did the humane thing. We gave him a suicide vest and chased him down a tunnel.
Why that makes me laugh like a child is beyond me. I don't know why. Maybe I'm picturing a dog running. But in any event, let's get to the serious stuff, because that's the only fun we're going to have, I think. Although Danny Zavallos comes out next hour, we'll try to have a little bit of fun here and there in between what's going on. Today really marked, here's what I say. In the time of Trump, if we are ever surprised by how low Trump goes or Trump supporters go, we only have ourselves to blame because we have not been paying attention. But what happened today, I actually did not expect to see. And it's a new level of vileness in a sea of despicableness that has been the Trump administration and his allies. And this is specific to the Trump sycophants in the media who love him. And you know what makes it even more stunning and ironic and cruel is that Trump and his supporters in the media on Fox News and other places love to say how much they love our troops and how much they love our veterans. They want to brag about them and protect them and elevate them, unless, of course, that veteran or current service member dares to criticize Trump, and then they smear them. They release the dogs of war to destroy their reputation. And that's what happened today. And it is a new level of vileness. What happened is last night, and I'll tell you what created all of this. Last night, about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, get home, breaking news, another person will testify tomorrow. And I'll tell you about this person before we get into why Trumpers went crazy. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, and he is part of the National Security Council. He is currently service. He's not a former lieutenant colonel. He's in uniform. He is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army. He's been for 20 years an officer in our Army. He's a Jewish refugee. He was born in the Ukraine, came here when he was 3 years old, which is all irrelevant because you might guess that's where the smear is going to go, playing on anti-Semitic tropes, playing on anti-immigrant bigotry. But that's what the Republican Party is truly about. Vindman is a decorated member of our armed services. He received a Purple Heart in 2003, while serving in Iraq. He was wounded by a roadside bomb. Later, he came back to the States. He had foreign assignments around the world. He even had time to go to Harvard and get a master's degree. And in 2018, joined the National Security Council. This is someone that you would think, wow, this is a true American patriot. And he is. Except he dared to criticize Donald Trump. Because to Trump and his allies, your patriotism is defined by not your loyalty to the United States of America, but your loyalty to Donald J. Trump. So what happened today? Well, we found out last night what was going to happen in Vindman's testimony. And so last night it began playing on anti-Semitic tropes, attacking him. And let me tell you a little bit about his testimony first before we play the clips of Fox News and even CNN, their new paid Trump defender, smearing Vindman today. What we learned in the released opening statement is that Vindman was going to testify in ways that was going to bolster the claim that there was a quid pro quo, that Donald Trump said to the Ukrainians that you got to do what I want in order to get your aid, in order to get a meeting between Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and Donald Trump. So we learn about that on some level. And at the outset, though, I want to point out one thing that Vindman talks about, and it gets lost in all of this. Because it's not just about Donald Trump, folks, and fighting with the Ukrainian leader or trying to make demands of the Ukrainian leader. It has to do with the United States of America and our national security. It has to do with the national security of our NATO allies in Europe. So this is what Vindman wrote. Since 2008, Russia has manifested an overtly aggressive foreign policy, leveraging military power and employing hybrid warfare to achieve its objectives of regional hegemony and global influence. Absent a deterrent to dissuade Russia from such aggression, there's an increased risk of further confrontations with the West. He adds, in this situation, a strong and independent Ukraine is critical to U.S. national security interests because Ukraine is a frontline state and a bulwark against Russian aggression. So when Donald Trump withheld aid from the Ukraine, he was hurting the United States of America, our national interest, our national security, our Western allies, especially in NATO, the ones in Europe, their national security by doing what he did. And in fact, as I did some research, the LA Times quantified it. Since Trump withheld the aid in mid-July to the Ukraine government, military aid, 25 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. 25. And it still has technically been released, but the money hasn't gone there. But as of a week and a half ago, 25 Ukrainian soldiers died in that time. This is a matter of life and death. This is not Watergate or Clinton. These are people who have died. Now, can I connect, and this is not in his testimony, can I connect that any of those people actually died because Trump withheld the aid? No, I can't. I'm not going to be irresponsible. But there is no doubt Donald Trump knew that withholding the aid could result in people dying. And Donald Trump did not care. Because Trump cares about one person, Donald Trump. And politically, he needed the Bidens investigated because he was fearful of him in 2020. So he didn't care if people died. The same way he didn't care if Kurdish women and children were be slaughtered, our former allies slaughtered. Because for him, it was politically a win. That's what it was about. So let's go back to what Vindman said here. Here are some of the most damning parts of his opening statement. By the way, he's still testifying. He's been testifying all day. It's behind closed doors. At some point, we were promised the transcript. And in fact, Congressman Jamie Raskin last night who was on House Judiciary, and said that we will be getting transcripts of just about everyone in the future. He testified, according to his open statement, that Vindman was at a meeting July 10th, 2019, with included then National Security Advisor John Bolton, other people like Ambassador Gordon Sondland. Remember him? He's the guy that gave $1 million to Trump to get the job. He's a rich GOP stooge of Trump. And others are in this meeting, and Ukrainian officials are in this meeting. And in this meeting, Gordon Sondland, I'll read, quote, started to speak about Ukraine delivering specific investigations in order to secure the meeting with the president. So Gordon Sondland's Trump's guy, gave $1 million, started talking about specific investigations. What we know is from the testimony is at that moment, John Bolton, who was then national security advisor and who left a month later from all of this, stopped the meeting. I guess he was that troubled by it. Right after the meeting, and I'll read from the testimony, quote, following the meeting, there was a scheduled debriefing during which Ambassador Sondland emphasized the importance that Ukraine deliver the investigations into the 2016 election, the Bidens, and Burisma, which of course Burisma is the company in the Ukraine where Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, served on the board of directors. That part of the testimony is really damning for Gordon Sondland. To remind people, 2 weeks ago when he testified, he said he did not, quote, recall taking part in any effort to encourage an investigation into the Bidens, close quote. So there you got Sondland testifying, I didn't encourage anyone to investigate the Bidens. You have this lieutenant colonel going in the meeting, and afterwards we went to Sondland and said, you shouldn't have brought up the Bidens. That was wrong. Someone's lying. Someone's lying under oath. Who do you trust here? The GOP wealthy hotelier who gave $1 million to Trump to get that job, or a man who's given over 20 years of his life, was wounded and got a Purple Heart? That's an easy one. We know who we believe there. Vindman went on in his testimony to express concerns with the infamous July 25th phone call when Donald Trump spoke to Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, asked point blank for help to investigate the Bidens. This is not hearsay. He was on the phone call, and that's what's unique about this. This is not someone, he's not saying I just read the transcript. He was on the phone call. He was on the phone call in the Situation Rooms, the Lieutenant Colonel, and listening in with colleagues from the National Security Council and the Office of the Vice President. So while Pence was on the call, his office was on, and they heard exactly what's going on. That last part, we'll come back to another day. I think we're getting closer to Mike Pence. What did Vindman say? He said that he heard Trump ask, just like in the transcript, loosely called a transcript, investigate Biden. He was troubled by it. He said, quote, I did not think it was proper to demand that a foreign government investigate a U.S. citizen. In both this instance and the earlier meeting, Vindman reported his concerns to the National Security's legal counsel right at that time. So you've got a paper trail where he goes in and he voices his concern to others, follows a chain of the command, goes to his superiors. He voices his concerns then. This is a guy who's for over 20 years a U.S. Army officer who has served in various places around the world, from South Korea to Iraq to Germany. What he heard was so stunning that he went to his superiors and went to the National Security General Counsel to go, this is wrong. The president is asking a foreign leader to investigate his political opponent to help him in a 2020 election. Boom. And it goes through the testimony. If he doesn't do that, there'll be no meeting between Trump and Zelensky. And that's what Zelensky really wanted. Well, that was too much for Team Trump. They went ballistic. They understand how damning this is. This is a man in uniform testifying. So last night, it began with Laura Ingraham and John Yoo, who's a lawyer. You might know him. His best work is he wrote the legal memo defending Bush when he was in the DOJ to torture people. So he's, you know what he is. So here they are. And listen how Laura Ingraham begins saying, I found this hidden part of the New York Times story. It's not hidden. That Vindman was not born in the United States of America. And listen where this goes. Clip number 3, please.
Fox News has confirmed that a White House national security official, his name is Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. He's going to tell impeachment investigators tomorrow in a statement that's been distributed to some media outlets that he twice reported objections over Trump's call with Ukraine. But get this. This is buried in the New York Times piece tonight, but I found it very interesting. He's a decorated colonel, by the way, in the Iraq War. But because Colonel Vindman emigrated from Ukraine along with his family when he was a child and is fluent in Ukrainian and Russian, Ukrainian officials sought advice from him about how to deal with Mr. Giuliani, though they typically communicated in English. Now, wait a second, John. Here we have a U.S. national security official who is advising Ukraine while working inside the White House, apparently against the president's interest, and usually they spoke in English. Isn't that kind of an interesting angle on this story?
I find that astounding, and some people might call that espionage.
So there's John Yoo, a man who defended torture in a legal memo, accusing a lieutenant colonel of spying, and Laura Ingraham giggling over the fact that he was born in another country. And that was where the smear begins. That's for the audience. That's red meat. That's dog whistle to the base. This guy's not born in America. He's Ukrainian heritage, so he's not a real American. And that's not stunning because Trump during the campaign, remember Judge Curiel, born in America but of Mexican heritage? And Trump said he can't be fair because he's of Mexican heritage. This is the same garbage. This is the same Trumpism cancer that we've seen for years then. Then they picked it up in case the Fox News went to bed early. Fox and Friends, Brian Kilmeade. His view is that because the lieutenant colonel was born in the Ukraine, he has an affinity to Ukrainian people, which again is dog whistle code. Let's hear clip number 4.
So he's got a Purple Heart, and he is from the Soviet Union. He emigrated here and has an affinity to the Ukrainian people.
An affinity to the Ukrainian people? What? And what they're doing here is suggesting that he's not loyal to the United States of America, that he's more loyal to the Ukraine where he was born, where he actually fled with his family during the Soviet Union. And despite the fact he was wounded, he spilled blood for this nation, was almost killed in Iraq, has a Purple Heart. But these cowards, none of them served in the military, are demeaning this lieutenant colonel. And then it gets worse. On CNN, Sean Duffy, former Republican, you might know him from MTV's Real World, and now he's a paid Trump defender, which is so sad that CNN's hired a guy to be a Trump defender. And he gets even worse. He puts it right out there. He does not believe that Lieutenant Colonel is concerned about American policy. He's only concerned with Ukrainian policy. Here's clip number 5.
When I asked you about Colonel Vindman, the very first thing you said was he was Ukrainian. So yes or no, do you trust Ambassador Bill Taylor more because he was born in the United States? Where does the location of his birth matter? Mark Meadows, who I think you agree with, was born in France. Is he pro-French by definition? That's a pretty stunning comment you made just there. And it's remarkable and notable given that Laura Ingraham last night in her apparent talking points brought it up as well.
So I read his statement, John, and I'm sure you did as well. And it seems very clear that he is incredibly concerned about Ukrainian defense. I don't know that he's concerned about American policy, but his main mission was to make sure that the Ukraine got those weapons. I understand that. We all have an affinity to our homeland where we came from. Like me, I'm sure that Vindman has the same affinity. Or like Mark Meadows.
I'm just sorry. Are you suggesting that you would put Irish defense over U.S. defense? Is that what you're saying, Congressman?
So I won't play the answer because he just didn't address that directly and went on to blah, 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 talking points. So Duffy says, we all have an affinity to our homeland where we come from. This is a despicable smear of a man who has a Purple Heart, who has served our nation for 20 years, who continues in uniform today to testify. He is not the whistleblower. To be very clear, he put in his testimony, he is not the whistleblower. And I will add there's another level of despicableness here, knowing or unknowing. These baseless attacks that this man is not loyal to America, the fact that he's Jewish raises the specter of an anti-Semitic trope of due loyalty. And I'm not the only one that noticed this. Seth Mandel, who's Jewish, the editor of the Washington Examiner, tweeted Monday about Fox News' attack. If you objected, as you should have, to Bob Menendez accusing David Friedman of dual loyalty at a hearing, and to Dianne Feinstein accusing Amy Coney Barrett of being loyal first to Rome, but are quiet about the attacks on Vindman, you are a hypocrite. Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times raised a similar concern there. If he was Christian, would they do the same thing? Probably, but it adds another level of insidiousness that they do it to someone who's Jewish. That they're saying he's not loyal. That he's not loyal to this country because he came here when he was 3, and also the fact that he's Jewish. This is where we are. This is how vile Trump has become and Trumpism. To me, these attacks are not atypical. They're not outliers. This is Trumpism, folks. Trumpism is defending Donald Trump at all costs, even if it means smearing a person who is still serving in our military, who has a Purple Heart, or smearing highly respected military veterans. We saw that last week. Ambassador Bill Taylor's testimony made it very clear there was a quid pro quo. In response, the White House attacked Taylor, saying he's part of a group of radical, unelected bureaucrats waging a war on the Constitution. And Trump himself got involved, slamming Taylor by name on October 23rd as a never-Trumper. And an hour later, Trump tweeted, "And never-Trumpers are human scum." Bill Taylor is a West Point graduate. Bill Taylor served 6 years in Vietnam as an infantry officer and with the 101st Airborne Division. He has served Democrats and Republicans since 1985. The only reason he took this job, he had retired from government. Mike Pompeo begged him to come back. There's no disputing that. But still, none of this matters because to Trump and his allies, it's about one thing: absolute loyalty to their supreme leader. Love of country doesn't matter. Service does not matter. The American dream or the American promise, none of that matters to them. You can see this. The only principle is power and defending Trump at all costs. And if that means smearing people who've served our nation or are continuing to serve, so be it. To them, you're either with Trump or you're against America. It even goes for the members of our armed services and our veterans. And this is where we are in the world of Trump today. I flipped this around. I've said this for months now. I think at this point, you're either with Trump or you're with the United States of America. And I say with all sincerity, I hope every Trumper listening, I hope you pick the United States of America. I beg you to pick the United States of America. Trump is going to pass and go on. We'll have another president, whatever it might be. It could be Pence one day, whatever. Do not fight on the Hill for this guy. He is not worth it. You can see it. He's about himself, about profiting for himself. It's always about Trump. That's all he cares about. Doesn't care who dies. Doesn't care Ukrainians die. Doesn't care if Kurdish allies die. He doesn't care if you or your family die. I'm just being blunt. Pick the United States of America over Trump. I implore you to do that. Doesn't mean you're giving up on a Republican or a conservative. Trump is neither of them. He is a Trump. That's all he cares about. So this is where we are. That's why I began today by saying today's a new level of despicableness and vileness in a sea, in a tsunami of that garbage. Because up until today, they have not smeared a sitting member of our military who's got a Purple Heart for being wounded in Iraq, who served as a U.S. Army officer for 22 decades. And they smear him in the most vile ways. The idea he's not born in America, so he might not be loyal, and also playing, knowingly or unknowingly, I can't tell you, on anti-Semitic tropes, but in any event, they are playing on that. And for some of the base, they get it in a second. They see he's Jewish, and he doesn't support Trump. It feeds this white nationalist, white supremacist narrative of some part of his base. This is where we are. So you're my guest. I'd love to hear from you. Is this a new low? Have we hit a new... There's no bottom. I mean, let's not joke around. This is nothing. We are a year and 1 week from Election Day. If Trump's still on the ballot, it will get much worse. Strap yourself in. Do whatever you have to. Get ready mentally and emotionally. It's going to be a hard year, and we're going to destroy Donald Trump on November 3rd, 2020, if he's not removed by his own party before that, because that could happen. It's going to be a rough year. So I want to hear from you. 866-997-4748. Be right back after this. You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where we crush Trump's lies every single day
on Sirius